Welcome back to OneSoccer Today. Andy, Gareth, Ollie. Hey, Major League Soccer fans, don't you just love this international break right before MLS playoffs? I feel like we've been talking about this since the beginning of MLS. We'll get into that in just a moment, but how is it affecting teams this year in the era of COVID? Well, you have Montreal, who had to come up huge in order to be in the play-in game. They're going to be without Wanyama. He was called up by his side of Kenya, and then also with the quarantine restrictions when he comes back for 2 weeks, he's going to miss the first 2 rounds. Then you have Miami as well. They're going to be without Pizarro. He's been called up by Mexico. Ollie, not ideal for MLS teams.
It's not ideal. It's kind of crazy, right? And in Wanyama's case, he is playing in a competitive game. He's playing in the African Cup of Nations qualifying. So Montreal are obligated to let him go because it's a FIFA window. Obviously, that really is going to hurt them because they've also got Samuel Piette suspended. So all of a sudden, their midfield is missing 2 of its 3 normal starters. But the Pizarro one is really the mystery and the crazy one to me. Like, this is a guy who's a designated player, a star player for Inter Miami, and he's going to play for Mexico in friendlies. You know, these aren't competitive games. They're not qualifiers. I don't think, as far as I understand the rules, that Inter Miami are obligated to let the player go. But obviously he wants to play for Mexico. He wants to stake his claim with the national team and not miss a window. And Inter Miami misses out on a key player in certainly the first round and potentially the second one if they get there because of the travel restrictions. It's something that's been a problem for MLS for years now, and it's being really exacerbated, obviously, by COVID and the 14-day quarantine.
And this is exactly why, Andy, Major League Soccer moved up the MLS Cup last season for the first time, thank God. It was played on November 10th, but obviously in this COVID year, everything kind of shifted and changed. But this is the exact issue that you wanted to avoid. And obviously quarantine rules didn't come into play, but you see players get injured and players become unavailable and less committed when they're away on international duty. And this is something that MLS clubs have battled for ages now. It has to come to an end, especially when premier players like this are unavailable for the MLS Cup playoffs, which the league and their sponsors and everyone involved want you to make you think are the biggest games in the season, and you're missing some of the biggest names in this league. It just can't happen, but unfortunately it continues to happen.
Yeah, you're right. Last year they tried to speed things along. It was the one and done, right? Not the 2 legs anymore. And you did see it end in November 10th, whereas typically you see the final December 12th. Pandemic era, obviously it's getting pushed back again, and once again we're seeing MLS affected by this. But let's start to focus a little bit more Major League Soccer. We have 4 teams that are playing in the play-in game, so you have 2 franchises, new franchises that have joined MLS. They'll be going up against each other, Nashville, Inter Miami, and then you have long-standing New England Revolution taking on the Montreal Impact. Again, on decision day, had to come up with a huge win to even get in and stay in that play-in position. Gareth, who is under the most pressure when it comes to these 4 teams?
First off, 69% of your teams making the playoffs. Far too many teams are in the MLS Cup playoffs this year. But if I'm going to pick one team that there's more pressure on, I have no expectations for them to go deep, but it's Inter Miami for one reason and one reason only. They're playing Nashville, their fellow expansion club, in an expansion year where one in Inter Miami was probably expected to make the playoffs and Nashville was not. They are operating on completely different planets in terms of payroll and expenditure. David Beckham and company have brought over Gonzalo Higuain, paying him upwards of $8 million a season. Pizarro is making almost $5 million. Blaise Matuidi, somewhere close to $2 million. All 3 designated players on Nashville combined probably make less than Matuidi does. I mean, when you spend the cash, more pressure has to be on you. And the fact they're playing their fellow expansion team, the pressure should be on the high spenders to beat those, the little guys in Nashville.
I can just picture, Gareth, you're going to keep just clenching that fist to the skies, saying too many teams in MLS playoffs this year. Ollie, who do you think is under the most pressure?
For me, it has to be the New England Revolution. You know, this is a team that's spent quite a bit of money in the last couple of years. Players like Gustavo Bo and Adam Buxa, they've really tried to turn this team around, and obviously bringing in Bruce Arena was a big part of that as well. You don't do that. You don't hire a former U.S. men's national team coach to bounce out in the playing game. And I think there's maybe a bit of pressure on Bruce Arena himself. He's still trying to kind of bring his reputation back, come back to relevance a little bit after what happened in Trinidad with the US, obviously in 2018 World Cup qualifying. I think he'd love to knock off a few of these young hotshot coaches who are supposed to be, taking over from Bruce Arena and showing him that he's maybe a little bit behind the times. I think he'd love to prove all those people wrong, and this is an opportunity to do it. It's a little bit of a dark horse in the MLS Cup playoffs.